Hey guys, I'm going to do a quick video here. It's been a while since I did one of these. There's a reason for that. I'm actually working on a lot of lawsuits, and it's actually good stuff that should help a lot of you people because it's the same stuff you people are going through. But I got this message today from Randy, and got me to thinking. There's all the existing files I have up there. They've been, I've done them over the last year or 2 years. And it's like anything. I mean, you do this stuff every day. You read, you study, you learn, you get to meet new people. Uh, you pick up new skills. And if I had to go back and rewrite those documents, they would look totally different. And a lot of what would be in those documents would be stuff that I've learned from Steve Emerson, Randy Kelton, and the stuff I've gotten out of American jurisprudence. It's pretty amazing when you read something like that, when you go look up property taxes or you look up property rights, that what you see in American jurisprudence, which is supported by case law, very different than what your local municipalities are doing. And it's let's say that, like Steve said, the system's, believe it or not, the system's perfect. The laws are perfect. The problem is not the laws. It's the people that are executing the laws. They're abusing them. They're purposely abusing them, and they're doing that for financial gain. When you purposely abuse laws for financial gain, and you do it through force, threat, and duress, well, that's theft. Okay, it's extortion and it's theft, and that's exactly what's going on here. So, like I said, if I had to go back and do all the files again, because Randy asked me if he could update some of the files, I said, sure, go for it. If you can make them better, great. I did them a year ago, 2 years ago, and if I rewrote them, they'd be totally different right now. So, by all means. Now, not that they haven't been successful. I mean, we had a lot of success using those documents. A lot of people have gotten remedy, which is great. But it's like anything, you do something for a year or 2 years, you get better at it. And if you went back to redo it, you would totally, change what you did a year ago or 2 years ago. So that's what's going on with those files. They're still useful. Just, hey, if Randy wants to update them, that's great. Because, like I said, if I was using them right now, I would be updating them too. But I just put this little thing called, I call it a shit sheet in Telegram. What that is, basically, that's all the stuff that, like, as I'm going through, I'm helping somebody with one of my buddies with a local ordinance. He horrible crime. He parked his Corvette next to his driveway on his property, but it's on the grass, and God forbid the borough. You can't do that in the borough, which is nonsense. It's his property. He can do whatever he wants. And so I started digging through some ordinance stuff in Amjur, and it led me down the rabbit hole to property taxes, and then basically what property is. So I threw some, like, they're not organized. I just sort of, as I went through them, I just stuck them up there, but they all have references. Like anytime you read a paragraph and you see the numbers, you'll find the case references underneath. So I did put that in there, but it should be useful for a lot of your stuff because it talks about ordinances, it talks about property, what property is, and it talks about taxation and stuff. And property is I mean, you'd be surprised when you read American jurisprudence. Property is pretty much what you think it is. It's your exclusive thing. You could do whatever you want with that property. As long as you're not harming or damaging your neighbor, you could do whatever you want with that property. Which takes us to what the county does with your property. When that deed gets recorded with the property, listen, there's nothing wrong with having the deed recorded at the county recorder. That's just proof that you own that property. That's all that is. But what these people have done, these criminals, they've taken that deed and they've done a bunch of things with it that they weren't supposed to do. They took your deed and they categorized your property as residential real estate, and they gave them all these codes and whatnot. And they think because they called your property residential real estate and they coded it, whatever they coded it with, that it somehow grants them rights in your property, and that's not how property rights work. Like Steve said, I don't care what they call my property. I don't care what you call my stuff or call me. Doesn't grant you rights. And that's exactly what this stuff is. So when you go through and look at some of those notes I had on property, I mean, it basically says that you can do whatever you want with that property. As long as you're not doing something illegal and you're not harming or damaging somebody else's rights. Well, at present, if you look at the way your property is coded by the county, you're very limited to what you could do with that property. So right there, you have a rights violation. And with the property stuff, it all brings us back to the property tax stuff. Listen, property taxes for the average man or woman are illegal, okay? You're not a taxpayer. And when you go through and read American jurisprudence, you go through and read your state tax code and your administrative code and your constitution, you're going to find out that you're not a taxpayer. Think about the basics of this, okay? I own a home. I own land, and there's the property on it's the home. That's mine, okay? It's my exclusive property. Nobody from the county can come walking on my property. We know that for a fact. They just can't come into my house. They would need a warrant. They'd have to go to a judge and swear under oath or affirmation that I'm committing some crime or doing something illegal, and the judge would have to believe it and sign it, and that would issue the warrant, and they could come arrest me. Now, we know they can't, or to search my property, you could do a search warrant too. Now, we know they just can't walk in my property. Right there tells you that if they just can't walk in your property, then they don't have jurisdiction of your property. That's your property. That's why they need to have warrants to do anything, to search it or to come get you. They need warrants. So when you go through and read the property tax stuff, and like Pennsylvania calls them returns, I think Texas and some other states, they may use another term for it. They're not hiding nothing from you. They just use a different term. But the term still means a return. Here's how taxes work, okay? Think about it. I have a right to own this land and property. That's a substantive right. That's a substantive God-given right, basically, and that's secured by my state constitution and the federal constitution. It's well-established law that you can't tax rights. Can't do it. Can't tax rights. Can't tax my right to own the property, okay, or to own the land or own the house. Can't tax. That's my right to own that property. It's in my Pennsylvania Constitution. It's Article 1, Section 1, Inherent Rights of Mankind. I have a right to acquire, possess, and protect property. It's my land. That's my house. I have a right to protect this stuff. It's mine. Okay? They can't tax that. Well, if they're putting a tax on my property, which is they're calling an ad valorem tax. So ad valorem means according to value. So they got some. They're not even doing that properly, because the assessment firm, they've never come into the property to look through the property. This could be a burnout shell for all they know. They're looking on ZELLE and Trulia and whatever them other home sites are, and they're just pulling assessments out of the rear end, pretty much what they're doing, okay? Because they don't have any personal knowledge of the assessment they're creating. So they're not assessments right off the bat. And think about it. If what they're trying to claim with you is that, and me, because I own this land and I own the house on this property, that they could just go do an assessed value of the property and then tax it. Well, wouldn't that be taxing my right to own the property? To own the land and own the property? Of course it would be, okay? They can't tax rights. So they can't do an ad valorem assessment on the value of my property. Because I'm not doing anything. I'm not engaged. I don't have a business license with these people. I'm not conducting commerce from my home. I'm not exercising a business privilege from my land or my home. This is just where I live. Like Steve says, I eat, sleep, and do other things here. Okay, that's it. And that's my right, substantive right to have this home and to do those things. And they can't tax those rights. So they can't do an ad valorem assessment of the property and charge me a tax on it. Doesn't work. And when you go through and read your tax codes, you're going to find something where it's all through the Pennsylvania tax law. And it's amazing when you finally see this stuff. It's like, oh my God, it's been there all along. How did I miss this? In order to do an assessment, you must file a return first. The return has to be filed. And in Pennsylvania, it actually states that a return's got to be filed with either the Board of Assessment or the county commissioners. Well, I don't file with the Board of Assessment, the county commissioners, for my property each year. But because it states for each year, you've got to file with the Board of Assessment or the county council. I don't file with them. I don't file any returns with them. And it further states that if you don't file a return with them, that you will be fined $500 or it would be a misdemeanor, and you could face up to 6 months in jail for something like that. Well, I've never been fined and I've never been in jail for property tax crap like that, like for not filing. So right off the bat, that tells you that, doesn't look like I'm a taxpayer here, because a taxpayer is required to file a return each year, okay? And from that return, they create the assessment. Okay? And the only way that your land and your property could be taxable is if they have something called a situs. And if you look up situs in Black's Law and Bouvier's dictionary, it'll tell you that a situs is a place of a crime or a business. Well, pretty when you think about it, there's no business being conducted here, but it definitely is a place of a crime, because them stealing money from you for property taxes is a crime. So damn right, that's a situs right there. But what they mean situs is they're talking about that you have a like one way you would have a situs with them is if I had a business license from the county or the township and I was conducting a business here. I was exercising business privileges provided by the borough, the town, the county. I don't have a business license with the town, the borough, or the county, so I don't have a situs with the county. I don't have a business license. I have a right to own property. So they can't just slap an ad valorem tax on the value of my property, because that would violate my right to own the property. That totally takes away property rights. The only way they could put an ad valorem tax on the property would be as if I had a business license with them and I was conducting a business out of here. Then they could do their little assessment thing, have this firm do their little, ZELLE search or Trulia search and whatever they do to calculate these assessments that are not assessments because they don't come out to the property and view it. But they can do whatever they want with their property or the people under their jurisdiction. That's up to them. It has nothing to do with me. But they can't do it to my property. So if I don't have a citizen with them, I don't have a business license with them, well, then I'm not a taxpayer by definition, okay? Which leads us down to ordinances. And this is how I went down this rabbit hole, because I'm trying to help my friend with this stupid fine. They're trying to charge him $190 for parking his car next to his own driveway. Imagine that, the crime of that. So there are ordinances. Listen, that's your property. And the only way you could be charged with an ordinance is if you were on their property and you broke some kind of code or whatever their ordinance is. Well, when you park your car next to your driveway, that's your property. Their ordinances are a nullity. They mean nothing, okay? These are not laws. The legislature, the Pennsylvania legislature passes laws. The legislature is the House, the Senate, and the governor would have to sign it, okay? That's known as a law. Ordinances are called local laws. Well, they're not state laws, they're local laws, which means they're corporate laws for the municipality. They're municipality laws, okay? And to create ordinances, the municipality needs both a territory and they need inhabitants. All right, they need a territory and inhabitants. So your land is not their territory. We know that because they would need a warrant to come on your property. So that's definitely not their territory. So we know that's true. And when you look up the definition, and it's right there in American jurisprudence, of what an inhabitant is a member of the corporation. Well, I'm not a member of Township of Aston or the Borough of Upland. I'm not a corporate member. I'm not a member of that municipality. And my physical location does not make me a member of that municipality. Now, if they owned this land and I bought this property on their land, this house, whatever, on their land, then I would be a member of their corporation. But I own the land and I own the house. And their ordinances are a nullity. They mean nothing to me, and they mean nothing to you, okay? So that's what ordinances are. They need to have inhabitants, which are members of the corporation, and they need to have a territory. Well, your land is not their territory. Just because somebody drew a line around your property and said, yep, you're in our territory, that's not law. That's not how law works. It's not how real law works, okay? You have a right to that land, and you know that because they couldn't come on your land without a search warrant. Now, just touch on a couple other things that I'm getting actually a little kick out of. But because I've sort of gone down this road, the Steve Emerson road of success and getting paid, making these criminals pay you, I haven't grown a dime off of the back of anybody I've helped. I haven't asked anybody for a penny for any document I've given them or any any consultation I've given them on the phone. I haven't asked for a penny. But for whatever reason, I'm now being kicked out of common law groups. So it seems like when the truth opposes their narrative, instead of looking at the truth, they just look at, in other words, they want to kill the messenger. I'm the messenger. They don't like the message, so they want to kill the messenger. So it's funny. I'm getting kicked out of these common law groups, and they're the same common law groups that had no problem using my videos without asking me, putting them up on their site. That was fine as they grew their membership, but now since I'm using the actual law and the codes and the statutes, using it against the people that are supposed to be following it for remedy, because I know that's how you get remedy. I know that for a fact. I know that for certain. This is not Patriot mythology. I know people who've gotten paid tens of millions of dollars doing this. This is why I went down this road. When the guy who's got over $50 million of settlements tells you, hey, listen, you're looking at this wrong. Look at it this way. You listen to him. Okay, you check your ego at the door and you listen to him. You got another guy like that here. You got Randy Kelton like that too, basically. Randy's a creature of statute. So's Steve Emerson, okay? So's Dave Merland. So's Chappie. So's Brett. So's Jessica. You stick to those statutes. Like Steve said, there's nothing wrong that those statutes are perfect. The problem isn't the statutes. It's the people that are abusing those statutes. And they're doing it under the color of law. And that's what gets you in federal district court under 42-1983, Title 42-1983. And that's another myth that's out there, that the 14th Amendment's made you a slave. Nonsense. That 14th Amendment's your best friend. Because what that allows you to do is drag that municipality and those corrupt actors working for them into federal district court and make them answer to you. That's what that 14th Amendment does. That's what it helps to do. So, and I've also seen myself listed on, this was shocking, somebody sent me a link to this one. I think it's called the Ripoff Report. I always thought you had to charge somebody money to rip them off. And if I haven't charged you a penny, I'm not sure how I really ripped you off. So that's a new one. So there's this little smear campaign going on, which is fine. I could care less. Really, I just get a kick out of it. I just think it's funny. I think it's petty. So I get the little smear campaign going on against people like me, and I guess somebody criticized me the other day for doing the same stuff that Randy and Steve do, and Brett does, and Jessica does, and I said, well, then you must be talking about them too. And he said, no, you're putting words in my mouth. They do the same thing I'm doing. So if you're going to rip me, you must be ripping them. So the whole logic of the thing doesn't make sense. These are people that have been hung up in this Patriot mythology thing. They've been doing this for years. They get hung up in that quantum grammar thing, that whole nonsense. These guys, what they do, they appointed themselves the postmaster generals or something of the U.S. Listen, when you hear that, you should turn around and run right away when someone tells you that they're the postmaster general. Run. When you see that stuff, and I see the way Dave Wood Miller marked up documents and all, my God, please don't send documents into a court or a legal proceeding like that. They're gonna steamroll you when they see that. They're gonna destroy you. Stay away from that stuff. And listen, when you want to, there's another thing you're also not utilizing. Listen, we do bar grievances, we do state criminal complaints, federal criminal complaints. Utilize your record request law. Because what I've been doing with them especially the last couple weeks, and I've been doing it for a year or so, but you'll get them in catch-22s. Because I just sent a new record request into the county because they're threatening me. They're going to sell my homes, whatever, and that's not going to happen. I got more than enough money to pay it off if I need to pay it off, if they don't come to their senses by then. And I'm not real worried because I already have the suit in my pocket that I'm going to bring in federal district court with. I already have it. It's just being refined right now and touched up. And when that suit gets filed, there's nobody from the county coming in to answer that complaint, that criminal complaint that's going to go into the 42-1983 pleading. There's nobody going to answer it. They can't answer it. So what I did is I start setting them up because I know this is going to be happen within the next 2 or 3 months. This suit's going to get filed. So I sent record requests in, and I asked for the obvious. Now I just told you about you can't be a taxpayer because you don't file a return. You don't file returns. You couldn't be a taxpayer if you couldn't even want to be a taxpayer. You couldn't volunteer to be a taxpayer because by law you don't meet the criteria, the elements of being a taxpayer. Okay, what you have are these local officials, and listen, I think a majority of them have no clue what they're doing. I mean, I've talked to these people. They don't understand the law. They don't. And as soon as you question them on a couple things, I mean, I had the head property tax assessor twice. I had him in a face-to-face meeting and I had him in a phone conversation. And when I just put him in a corner by asking him a basic question that he couldn't answer, he immediately ran to his attorney. Well, you got to ask the attorneys. Well, John, you're the head property assessor here. You just told me you can take properties, you put properties on and off the assessment roll. You can't answer your own. You can't verify what you're doing. You can't support it. I got to go talk to some slick lawyer that's got nothing to do with this whole little thing here, and he's going to try and cover your rear end. And when you hear things like that, you know you're over the target, and that's called a red flag. You got them, basically, because they don't know what they're doing. And when they get someone who knows what they're doing, and they start sectioning them off and asking them basic things like, hey, pursuant to this Title 72 return by taxpayer, it states that a taxpayer must file a return with the Board of Assessment or the county council. I never filed such return. John, do you have this return? Oh, you got to talk to the attorneys. So that's what your record requests are for. We request documents that we know they don't have. We request documents that they're supposed to have, and let them instinctively answer you that they don't have any such records to meet your request. Great. They won their little battle because they don't have to turn it over to you right there, and they lost the war because they are records you're requesting that by law, and when you read your record request law, it'll state that they're required to keep records that they need to keep pursuant to law. Well, if they're going to call you a taxpayer pursuant to law, they better have returns on file. And the only way they can have an assessment is based off of that return. And like Steve said, there is no assessment without a return. If there's no return on file, they can't have an assessment. And if they do have something called an assessment, and they usually call them property record cards, which are like something you printed off of ZELLE. They're ridiculous. They're nothing. They're information fact sheets that are maybe wrong. They're not assessments, okay? And that assessment was never. There's nobody there that can testify to that assessment. But that assessment could have never been even created because they didn't have the return to file the assessment. They just can't go assess your property for the value, the ad valorem value of your property, which they claim they're doing, because that would violate your right to own the property. How could you own it if they could just come assess it? You have a substantive right to own property. That's a given. There's case law, United States Supreme Court case law. It's through your state constitution, through the federal constitution. It's a given. You have a right to own property, and you have a right to own it peaceably. Okay, well, these people coming along saying, hey, either pay us this money or we're going to take the property from you. Well, now we're getting into extortion and we're into mail fraud. Because these people are basically using the United States Postal Service to extort and threaten you to collect money. Okay? So start using that record request. Start asking for documents you know they can't have. But I want you to go, if you want to do this property tax stuff, which I know a lot of people are interested in this, go read your state tax law and go look for the part of talking about returns. And go look for anything in your state with a definition of a taxpayer. Because what you're going to see is that these are going to be corporate entities they're describing. Listen, when you see when you see taxpayer, it'll actually state natural person, or then it'll give like corporate names, corporate, this partnership, blah, 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 all these corporate entities. Statutory construction, the law of statutory construction is that the statutes have to be clear. Can't be ambiguous, can't be read into it. It's got to be clear. It's got to have a clear definition of what they're talking about. If they meant every man or woman in the county, they would have said every man or woman in the county, blah, 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 this, and this corporation, that corporation. They didn't do that. They didn't say every man or woman in the county. What they said was persons or individuals, however they want to put it. And an individual is also a business entity when you go and look at the legal definition of what an individual is. Okay, it's part of an individual is part of a corporate entity. So if the legislature meant every man or woman in the county, and same thing with your local boroughs and townships, if they meant every man or woman in the borough and township, they would say every man or woman. Those ordinances and those laws are not written that way. They're written for persons and individuals. There's a reason for that, because they're written for businesses. They're written for corporate entities, and you're not a corporate entity. You don't have a straw man. The all caps name is not a trust that you're involved in. Stay away from that nonsense, okay? You're a man. You have a right to own property. It's established in it's the Supreme Court case law, American jurisprudence, state constitution, federal constitution. That's a given. And where this is going to lead to is when I get my ducks in a row, and like I said, my pleading is written, it's just being touched up. And when this gets filed, I have pretty much an outline on how to walk these people into federal district court under Title 42, Section 1983. So even though it's going to be written for Pennsylvania, it's going to look like it's Pennsylvania laws and stuff. It's a roadmap for you, because all you got to do is go in and fill in the gaps and replace your stuff with Pennsylvania stuff, because it's all the same stuff. Only taxpayers file returns. If you're not filing a return on your house, you shouldn't be paying a property tax on your house. And if you don't have a business license, that you're not exercising a business privilege out of your house that's provided to you by the county or the township or the borough, they don't have a situs with your property. Therefore, they can't tax it.